Soulmates. Welcome back to yet another Monday, December 19th. Thanks so much for joining us right here on FOXSOUL's Black Report as the countdown to Christmas begins. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. We are honored to stand behind this desk each day to take you on a journey across Black America and the stories that impact our people, especially during the holiday season.
That's right. We're going to bring you our news, our views, and our voice. Taking a look at today's top stories, we start with a story out of Maryland as Charles County deputies have arrested a man accused of killing his wife. Police say that on Friday afternoon, 33-year-old Travis Wood, shown here, showed up to the sheriff's office asking deputies to do a welfare check at his home. Now, when they arrived at that home in Waldorf, they found his wife, Shonda Wood, shot and killed. Investigators quickly focused on Wood as the suspect and arrested him on multiple charges, including first and second-degree murder.
A former NBA star was arrested in Miami over the weekend, accused of hitting one of his teenage daughters in the face. Miami-Dade County court records show Amari Stoudemire was taken into custody yesterday morning before being released on bond with a no-contact order. He's accused of slapping and punching his daughter, drawing blood. Stoudemire has two daughters, aged 14 and 17, but the report doesn't specify which daughter was allegedly struck. He's facing a misdemeanor battery charge.
A man from suburban Seattle will serve 2 years in federal prison for threatening to shoot black customers at grocery stores in Buffalo, New York, and businesses in other states. Joey George pleaded guilty in November to making interstate threats and the hate crime of interference with a federally protected activity. Now, as a part of a plea agreement, George admitted he made phone calls threatening to shoot black customers at grocery stores in Buffalo, restaurants in California and Connecticut, and a marijuana dispensary in Maryland. George's public defender says his client has autism and suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder after a traumatic abusive childhood that caused him to disassociate from reality.
A jury has found Pierce County Sheriff Ed Troyer not guilty on 2 criminal misdemeanor charges following a 2-year-long criminal trial. Troyer faced 1 charge of false reporting and 1 charge of making a false or misleading statement to a public servant after he allegedly claimed an officer on an officer line to 911 dispatch that Cedric Althemeyer, a black newspaper carrier, threatened to kill him in January 2021. Troyer pleaded not guilty to the charges in October 2021. The state attorney general's office filed the charges against the sheriff after Governor Jay Inslee referred the case to the office. The attorney general's office cannot initiate a criminal investigation unless it receives and accepts a referral from a county prosecutor or governor. It took the jury less than a day to make its decision.
And this is why we continue to question, whether, going to the police, reporting, incidences such as this, or what we feel has been, a violation, is worth it or not, and why the fight for justice, or at least an explanation, or just some kind of fair result, is ongoing.
Yeah, and I think everybody deserves due process.
That's
and
right.
This is a big part of what the fight has and continues to be about. It's due process. We don't want, sheriffs out there, law enforcement out there, operating as if they're above the law. And, this case, went to trial and a jury has rendered their decision and folks will act and govern themselves accordingly.
We hope so.
But it puts law enforcement on notice, that people are watching and folks are unafraid to take things to a court of law if necessary.
That's true. All right. In a new ruling, the North Carolina Supreme Court says lawmakers violated the constitutional rights of black voters by targeting them with racially motivated voter ID rules. Now, the ruling found Republican leaders intentionally wrote the state's 2018 voter ID law so that the requirements would harm black voters more than white voters. Another voter ID law from 2013 was struck down in federal court for similar reasons. It was one of the two major voting rights decisions the Supreme Court issued on Friday. Now, the other case deals with partisan gerrymandering and underscores the ability of state courts to rule political districts unconstitutionally for being gerrymandered to artificially boost the power and influence of one political party's voters at the expense of voters on the other side.
Attorney General Merrick Garland has taken action to end sentencing disparities that have imposed harsher penalties for different forms of cocaine and worsened racial inequity in the U.S. justice system. In a memo Friday to federal prosecutors, Garland wrote, "For decades, federal law has imposed harsher sentences for crack cocaine, even though it isn't scientifically different from powder cocaine, creating unwarranted racial disparities." With changes to the laws stalled in Congress, Garland instructed prosecutors in nonviolent, low-level cases to file charges that avoid the mandatory minimum sentences that are triggered for smaller amounts of rock cocaine. Now on to
Soulmates. I'll take it. Soulmates, you're going to want to pay attention to this story because this fight is on and popping as Senate Republicans are attempting to secure a plan to make sure the discrimination ban based on hair texture or styles does not become law, federal law that is. Now, the legislation would make discrimination against a person because of his or her natural hair a federal crime if that person's hairstyle or texture is associated with a particular race or national origin. Senator Cory Booker led an effort to pass the Crown Act, which stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair, with unanimous approval in the upper chamber. So President Biden could sign that into law. But following the lead of Senator Rand Paul, GOP senators blocked the bill from being passed in the Senate. Like I said, the fight continues.
Sure does. Now off to the Black Census Project that's in its final stretch, working to make a public policy agenda focus on the needs of our people. Things are often not as engaged in conventional public polling and opinion research, but it's not meant to duplicate the once-a-decade federal population count from a couple years ago. We're referring to the census. Since February, canvassers have gone into black communities in nearly every U.S. state to conduct the confidential self-reporting survey, which is also available online. The survey, which takes about 10 minutes, ask participants their views on political representation in both parties, racial justice issues, and the coronavirus pandemic, among other topics. Now, if you have not completed the Black Census, you could do so by visiting blackcensus.org.
And you might have seen this story across social media as it definitely went viral. Delta Airlines is investigating allegations of racism from an Emmy-nominated children's TV writer who said he was denied boarding his flight from LA to Boston by a gate agent. Now, in a viral tweet, Darnell Lamont Walker, who is black, said he was turned away at a Delta gate in LA at that airport by a gate agent who is white, only to then watch several white passengers be allowed onto the plane. Now, Walker said that when a nearby customer remarked, quote, "This seems racist," the gate agent responded by saying, quote, "It is." As Walker waited in the customer service line, he said he saw 4 other passengers approach the gate who were white and were allowed to board the flight. Now, in an email, Delta Airlines said the company was aware of the incident and it is now being investigated. And if, in fact, like the story says, that gate agent said what they said, they probably won't or don't have a job right now because clearly, whether it was out of frustration or if you really feel that way and we can label you as a racist, clearly out of line.
I mean, there's just a lot of nastiness out there. You know, traveling these days, is already, ridden with its challenges, especially during the holidays. And the last thing anybody wants is to feel as if they're being treated differently because of their race or any other characteristic. And so, hat tip to the brother for filing the complaint.
That's right.
For for leaning into Delta's process, and we'll continue to keep our eye on this and take a look at what Delta discovers in the investigation, but more importantly, if they discover malintent, what they're going to do about it.
Yeah, and keeping an even keel and not allowing that to escalate as maybe some passengers of color would have allowed that to go. So we'll definitely keep up on that and see what Delta has to say.
I know we fly Delta quite a bit, and so we're paying extra close attention to this story.
And you were flying this weekend. Coming up, a White House exclusive only on Fox Soul's Black Report.
That's right. When we come back, it's the first part of my exclusive interview with White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. You don't want to miss it. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report. Back in a moment.